25 years ago, Umberto Eco wrote a book on translation, and that book is called Rata Mouse. When he had to launch Rata Mouse, it was in various universities across Europe. And the first question he asked is, in what language should I talk about the challenge of translation? In the translated language or in the original language in which it was written? And he said that appropriate response should be bilingual. And I'm really happy that the speakers before me managed to switch between English and Tamil, because it's very, very important to keep this in mind, because you are mediating between two languages and two interesting sensibilities. Translation from Tamil is extremely difficult. Take it from me because I've done it. And there are also a number of works which I couldn't complete. For instance, we are going to talk about Pumani today. From Pumani's town, Koilpatti, there's another writer called Konangi, whose work I was supposed to translate. And I got stuck with one particular line because I could never capture the poetics of that particular line. In Tamil, it goes like this. கேள்விகள் எல்லாம் ஆயிரம் தலை பாம்புகளாய் படம் எடுத்து ஆடிக்கொண்டே இருக்க, பதில்கள் எல்லாம் தவளைகளாய் எல்லா திக்கிலும் குதித்து குதித்து ஓட, என்ன செய்வது என்று தெரியாமல், எந்த திக்கில் செல்வது என்று தெரியாமல் தவித்து நின்றான் அவன். Yes, this is the most simplest line what he had written. I translated it at least 100 times. I could never get that poetry in it. Therefore, the crucial element is try to get the poetry of the original language. Getting the poetry of the original language is extremely difficult. Even the most talented translator like A.K. Ramanujam had failed in specific instances. A.K. Ramanujam, who has done some amazing translation, in one place, for Senna Pulavar, he has translated it as red tongue poet. If a person of A.K. Ramanujam can stumble and fail, translation is a very, very tricky minefield. Anybody who ventures into it deserves enormous appreciation, because they need enormous courage to do it. So first, my sincere appreciation. Second thing which I would like to flag. In the last 25-30 years, Tamil is seeing a new renaissance with reference to the translation. When we are talking about Pumani's Piragu coming out, we also know that Pumani's other book, Vekkai, has been translated into English. Most of the Tamil writers are now available in English, which was not the case, say, in the early 80s. In the early 80s, even somebody like Pudmai Pittan was not available in English easily. And the quality of translation has also matured over the period of time. In fact, if you look at the Tamil translation of the 70s, the translation of the Tamil works into English in 70s, to the translation of Tamil works now, we find quite a lot of qualitative leap, because these translators have imbibed these techniques of translating and rendering it without losing the original flavor. For instance, Marx uses the word ailesa as ailesa. And this freedom is what is extremely important. Primarily because I would like to remind you, in 89, I translated a Tamil short story in which there was one line which goes like this. Naan enna pudhumi pittana kadavule ezhuthu sooru poda. That was the line which I translated. My English editors at Penguin said, put a footnote for Pudhumai Pittan. Therefore, I have to put a footnote about Pudhumai Pittan, Kadavulum Kandasamy Pillayam and everything else, because you have to introduce anything in other Indian languages to the English speaker. Whereas when it is an English consciousness, everybody is expected to understand. There can be reference to Joyce, we should understand. There can be a reference to Wordsworth, we should understand. There can be a reference to Shakespeare, we should understand. But if there is going to be a reference to NSK or Pudhumai Pittan, we have to put a footnote. And this footnote business is still continuing, because I'm doing another biography right now. And for this biography, I was asked to do footnote for N.S. Krishnan, Jeevanandam, Kannadasan, Jayakanthan. This is as of 2020. They were translating from Tamil as its own difficulties. Luckily for Marx, he had a publisher from this milieu who did not force him to do all these footnotes. I, as a reader, find these footnotes extremely annoying because footnotes is helpful only when it is an academic text. If it is a literary text, it should have its inherent flow. And the advantage of and then is that it retains its intrinsic rhythm without the help of footnotes. It does not use any external crutches to take the story forward. Thank you, sir. I also have a request before I get into the specifics of this book that Mr. Marx should take up the translation of Poomani's Sakati Academy Award winning work, Angadi. Because that covers the entire region for a period of nearly 100 years. What we get in Piragu or what we get in Vekkai are slices. And in Angadi, we find all these slices incorporated into one whole. And it needs somebody to do the translation, and I think you should take it up, sir. See, Poomani is actually, somebody asked me to define, how do you define Poomani? I said Poomani is Tamil's own midnight children. Because he was born in 1947. And when I say that he is Tamil's own midnight child, there are 3 or 4 reasons. One is, he is one person who is refusing to be ghettoized into the debilitating debate which is happening in the state, which tries to pit Periyar against Ambedkar or Ambedkar against Periyar. He tries to straddle these two worlds simultaneously. He does not make them competitively opposed or antagonistic entities. So the fact that Poomani, the earlier speaker spoke about the inclusivity, and Poomani talks about in terms of a very, very inclusive politics. His politics is not Periyar versus Ambedkar, but it is Periyar and Ambedkar, which makes it much more interesting and much more open. And in a sense, it is the recognition of what Ambedkar talks about, the graded inequality. In fact, if you look at his novels, it works primarily because it has all the shades of grey without getting into black and white. The fact that it has all the shades of grey without getting into black and white, and that's a reason why this graded inequality of the caste comes out much more poignantly in Poomani's work than in anybody else's work. See, one of the things what I like is Poomani's prose, because it is as enjoyable as Sangam poetry. Some people have this extremely powerful element of using Pigden without reducing some works' literary stature. And in English, the latest development was Amitav Ghosh trilogy, which used the Pigden of the sailors, and which was also a patchwork of Bhojpuri, Hindi, Hindustani, Urdu, and Bangla to weave a tapestry. What Poomani does is, he draws from the rich oral Tamil tradition, where every caste and region has its own dialect and usages, where language functions as a social registry to bring out the graded, sedimentary nature of a social hierarchy. Besides, while describing the cataclysmic events, Poomani retains a focus on his characters. Recurring tragedies like riots, land grab, colonial excesses have no temporal limitations and always seem to reprise a recent tragedy. Despite independence and progress in many spheres, the world is sliding. He captures the irony of concurrent existence of progress and obscurantism by creating multiple images of water as metaphor, as simile, as physical object, as spiritual object. In fact, one thing what links these 3 works, Vekkai, Piragu, and Angadi, is that the way water has been invoked. In fact, Vekkai is actually dealing with heat. Our novel deals with heat as some very, very interesting imagery of water. So the idea of water, which keeps recurring in this work, and in fact, the novel travels through successive rendition of water. Here, water bodies are not just life givers, but also find places to commit suicide. This is not my word, this is said by Pumani in a passing. He says, water bodies are not just life givers, but also find places to commit suicide. Here, the sheer poignancy of this is so important, primarily because in another short story, he talks about one simple image, again using water. It's a short story. It's about the village well in which Nallatangal jumped to commit suicide. He says that anybody who looks into that well can see the face of the woman who is a Nallatangal, and all the women in my village are Nallatangals. But the idea of the using of the water as a metaphor and the way he actually constructs a narrative using water is extremely important. And in the translation, none of these metaphors had become stale. That's where the translation has worked. And the translation did not use any explanatory note for the metaphors or for the usages. At some level, we are also asking people who are interested in knowing about what is happening in Tamil Nadu to do some homework, to do some fundamental work, to know more about this society. And it's not a spoon feeding. I think we have done enough of spoon feeding. We have done enough of spoon feeding, of introducing Thiruvallur for over the past 125 years with various translations. We have to start saying that this is in the form of couplet. Then for every Pillai Tamil, we have said that, oh, it's a literary form where lullaby is being used as an entry point. I think we should just stop it and say that, look, we are inheritors of a very, very rich literary tradition, which has a solid written tradition as well as oral tradition, and there are people who also straddle these two worlds. Come in, discover its wonders. I think the idea of this book is that this book is not a spoon-feeding book, but this is a book which is an open invitation into this huge canvas called the Tamil literary experience. And that's, with that, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
உன் கடவுளை விட, உன் சாஸ்திரத்தை விட, உன் முன்னோரை விட, உன் வெங்காயம் விளக்கமாத்தை விட, உன் அறிவு பெருசு, அதை சிந்தி.